The question is always the same. It never changes. We've had several versions of Unreal, and the question is always the same. LOD or Nanite? Which one should I use? Well, thanks to all the misinformation that's going around, even on the forums, believe it or not, there's a lot of it. So I decided to run a test with my team. A very special thanks to my team. Thank you, Daniel, for all the support you've given me to bring these results to us, and also to you watching on the other side of the screen, all right? So let's take a much closer and more detailed look at exactly which one of them actually works the very best in practice. The first thing I want to show you is which of the two delivers better performance, meaning higher FPS and shorter rendering times. Second, which of the two actually keeps the scene noticeably more visually stable, okay? Without that distracting popping effect and without losing those important fine details. And third, which of the two is generally easier to work with in the production pipeline? Since our goal is really to test the limits of all this, the real performance, to see if there's actually a performance gain, to bust this myth that, and I'm not kidding folks, even I and my team were surprised by the result. Very surprised, all right? But what were the specs we used? We used a computer that's overall somewhat above average. With an RTX 4060 graphics card, an i5 processor, and 32 gigabytes of RAM. Those were basically the specs we used. As for Unreal Engine, the version we tested was 5.6. In the future, I might even run the same test on 5.7 to really see if there's a difference between them. Okay, but maybe you're just starting out and you've barely heard of them, or maybe not at all. What is LOD and what is Nanite? Let me quickly explain the concept behind each one. LOD in this case stands for level of detail. It's a very traditional system for managing detail levels. Each model has several versions, okay? It goes from LOD 0 to LOD 7. If you're doing this process manually, I recommend going up to 5 if you really know what you're doing. If you're just starting out, use up to LOD 3 with a slightly higher polygon reduction from one model to the next. So how does this work? As you move farther away, right? Unreal automatically swaps in the different LODs. So you start with LOD 0, which is the highest quality, where the static mesh is still virgin, it hasn't been altered, right? It's exactly as you imported it. Got it? Then it switches to 1, then to 2, and then to 3. The higher the LOD number gets, the lower the polygon count goes, okay? For that structure, it makes it a bit lighter, essentially reducing the load. At least, that's what we believed at the time. Now, as for Nanite, Nanite is a technology from Unreal Engine. Instead of simply replacing the mesh, it works with millions of micro triangles divided into small blocks called clusters. And it will only show what is truly needed. Whereas a LOD model will show everything in 360 degrees. If you take that model and apply Nanite, it will only show what you are seeing. Let's say I have a rock. And behind that rock, there's another object. Man, you're not seeing it, so why would you need to render it? You don't. You don't need to. Even the part behind the rock, you don't need to. Whereas with LOD, it will render everything. Everything that's in your field of view. FPS means frames per second, okay? I believe we're a bit more in the know now. Many more people know what that means. And MS is the time the GPU takes to render each single frame. In this case, the shorter the time, the better. All right, folks? To compare LOD and Nanite, the following configurations were used. I used the same asset for both tests because 2 tests were set up, a test with the rock and then a test with the car. In the LOD test, I used all the LOD levels of the model that it had at that moment. In the Nanite test, I only activated Enable Nanite support. I created a giant matrix with thousands of instances and started with small instances. In this case, I started with 100 instances and kept increasing that number. I kept increasing it until the computer could handle it, until I could really see the actual difference. When I activated one or the other. In the case of LOD, right from the first attempts, I already noticed problems. With Nanite, everything changed. Really, it's incredible. Who who would have thought? Who would have thought that I, Raphael, would find that with LOD right at the beginning with just 100 instances, I'd already be seeing some problems, some differences compared to Nanite. And it was already noticeable. Imagine what will happen when I get to the end of the video with 10,000. The first test was with LOD with 100 instances. It seems like a small number, right, folks? It does. But that's where the surprise comes in. The performance dropped to about 35 FPS. I'm not kidding you. It dropped to 35 FPS. The rendering time went up quite a bit. And the worst part of all this is that Unreal wasn't rendering all the instances. I couldn't see everything rendered. In other words, even before the scene really started to get heavy, to get a bit more complex, a bit more crowded, I already noticed that difference right away. But I thought, okay, it must be something that happened at that moment. Let me continue with the test a bit to really see what my final result will be. When I increased all of this to 500, 1000, 2000, 4000, and 96 instances, something even more unusual happened. The more instances I placed, the fewer polygons Unreal was able to render. It got to a certain point where I wasn't seeing anything at all. Nothing. It was as if the memory was full. You know when your memory, your VRAM gets full and it can't show you things and your project seems like it's bugged? It went from that to worse. The engine literally started to fail. The scene wouldn't load completely. Several objects they didn't even appear. This made one thing very clear to me. LOD simply couldn't handle the heavy workload I was giving it at that time. The game changer was when I repeated the same tests with practically the same instances, the same object, okay? And I saw a really huge and noticeable difference. The only thing that I actually did, the only thing that changed in this entire setup was, look, activating Nanite. That was literally it. Nothing else at all. Nothing else. And then everything really seemed completely different. It didn't even feel like the same project. I swear to you, it didn't feel like the same project I was experiencing at that moment. The performance went up significantly, the FPS became much more stable and consistent, and most importantly, folks, all the instances in the scene were rendered successfully. The Unreal Engine started handling the entire scene without any kind of loss, limitation, or compromise. It was as if the engine had finally gotten that much needed breath of fresh air, Yeah, it was like I activated 100, 2000, 5000, 4000. It was running smoothly. I didn't notice the system was struggling, everything was rendered. But that's the thing, Then I realized, okay, is Nanite really all that impressive and revolutionary? Let's actually take a closer look and see what its true limit is, shall we? I'll tell you something right now, I could have gone much further. But the result I managed to achieve is excellent, it's great. After seeing Nanite work so well, I wanted to exaggerate and create a matrix of 10,000 instances, okay? And it wasn't just the rock this time, it was a car, and the car had 4 million polygons, more than 4 million polygons. And it was handling everything. It was crushing it. It was so incredibly smooth, almost as if the project was completely blank and untouched. Nanite rendered all 10,000 instances with absolutely no visual loss, no sharp FPS drops at all, maintaining approximately 120 stable FPS throughout. I repeat, 120 FPS, but the key concept here is truly stable. Man, I was honestly like, this can't be possible, can it? I probably could have reached 20,000. I probably could have reached 30,000. 50,000? Very likely. Would that make sense? I don't know if it would really make sense, to tell you the truth. But it could have gotten there. It really could have. Now, 10,000 for each one that had 4 million polygons. Oh my gosh, I'll let you do the math. We're talking about billions? Billions of polygons that the whole scene was managing to handle, while the other one, without it, was already maxing out. That was the moment when I truly realized that Nanite isn't just better, it's genuinely on another level of performance. It's completely like the step up, the gap there is absolutely huge. Epic Games, you really nailed it with this technology. You absolutely nailed it. Now, what's the deal? I want to take a moment to share some of my thoughts and impressions with you. I saw a video from a foreign creator doing practically the same thing, and his result was, it was either almost neck and neck. I'm not kidding here, it was almost neck and neck, or honestly, the LOD was even better than mine in some cases. I don't know if there were some different settings involved. I just know that I used Unreal Engine version 5.6 to do this particular test, My processor, it's an Intel, right? Not an AMD, so I don't know if there might be a difference there. That's a possibility, okay, folks? Let's not rule out any hypotheses because the processor is the one doing all this work, okay? So, I ended up getting this result that surprised even me. My team was surprised, right? Because until a few months ago, people would talk about Nanite, and man, no. But now, I apologize, with 5.6 that has completely changed. With 5.7, which is handling all of this with vegetation, I don't even want to know what's possible, especially with this PCG they also added that's even faster. Finally, we'll be able to create good projects. Hold on, let's not completely exclude LOD now. Just because I did this test, you shouldn't completely exclude LOD, okay? Let's keep working with LOD. Test it in your project, test it on your machine. This is extremely important. It's extremely important. In fact, LOD is still very good, really very good for characters that deform, for moving vegetation, effects, and WPO in mobile projects or VR or anything with low performance. VR is virtual reality, okay? These goggles you see behind me are for virtual reality. So LOD is still good for that. If you're making a game for mobile, man, LOD. VR, LOD. Augmented reality, LOD. You get it? Nanite, for now, doesn't fit in there yet. So not everything we're going to do here is going to use just LOD, okay? Or just Nanite either. Let's try something a bit more hybrid. And now, I'm going to give you my personal opinion on all of this.
Quando a cena cresce, eu deixo ela rodar. Se o peso aumenta, eu deixo o frame voar. Nanite me puxa e começa a escalar. LOD tentou, mas não conseguiu segurar. Quando a cena cresce, eu deixo ela rodar. Se o peso aumenta, eu deixo o frame voar. Nanite me puxa e começa a escalar. LOD tentou, mas não conseguiu segurar. Eu vi tanta gente falando sem provar, dizendo que o LOD era o jeito de otimizar. Mas botei na tela pra poder comparar. Sem instâncias caiu, não chegou nem a mostrar. A cena ficava ali tentando respirar. O frame é travado, difícil de acompanhar. Mas quando o Nanite entrou pra trabalhar, foi demil na pista 100% a cursionar. Sem ruído, sem queda, só render visão. Cada quadro fluindo, pura precisão. Eu testei no limite, além da simulação. E o Nanite mostrou quem domina a situação. Quando a cena cresce, eu deixo ela rodar. Se o peso aumenta, eu deixo o frame voar. Nanite me puxa e começa a escalar. LOD tentou, mas não conseguiu segurar. Conversa, é demonstração. 40 mil no grid e ele segura o mundão. Se é estático e pesado vira revolução. Eu só clico ativar e ele entrega a solução. Rodar, omitir, piscar, renderizar, sem medo, entregar, com visão.
Just because I released this video for you, this video deserves a like. Did you like it? Did you? I'm waiting. Where's the like? Did you do it? Very, very good, really? Very good. Anyway, now I'm going to give you my final conclusion. After testing all of this in practice, it became very clear to me. Nanite performs better, Nanite scales better, Nanite is more stable, Nanite is easier to use, Nanite doesn't suffer from the limitations that LOD presented. While LOD was already failing with 100 instances, Nanite was running at 10,000 instances with a high FPS. So if you want to create large scenes, especially scenes that are a bit more static, all right, take this tip. For scenes that are a bit more static, Nanite is a safe bet, all right? But don't forget to run that test, okay? And let's not discard LOD completely because it's still useful, all right? All right, folks? Thank you very much, and hey, I'm out. See you in the next video.